Guys.
Well, of course it's starting. It is live. Yeah. All right. Hey, welcome.
Oh,
We're here.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome
morning.
Monday morning. It is great to have everyone here. We have a very special guest, my business partner and the CTO of Valley Technology, Gene McMurray. He is kind of the, I don't know, Swiss Army knife, special project, weird. Hey, Gene, we got this weird thing happening here. Can you think of
pretty
that?
much.
Pretty much. So if it's weird, it requires taking tools on an airplane and just solving the problem and just kind of sitting there scratching, your head. When there's a head scratcher,
That's why.
It's not the left. It's not the left at all. So anyway, we would love to have some questions here, but just more questions, some stuff coming in. But what we're doing is just kind of going to go over Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi has been an ubiquitous piece of our lives for the last 20 years, and it's become so enmeshed, ingrained in everything we do that we're just expected everywhere we go. But it's actually much more complicated than it looks on the surface. You kind of think of you get your wire, you get some kind of router of some sort, plug it in, this works. But the reality is, as we found out over the years of deploying it to hundreds of locations, it's not quite that simple. A lot more to it, and there's some planning. There's a lot of things. So what we're going to do here today is take some questions, and I'm going to let Justin and Gene really kind of go through a little bit of how Wi-Fi works, a little bit how to optimize it in your own home setting, how to make it not make us become a source of frustration. You might have that dark corner of the house or the apartment that doesn't work, and maybe they can give you some light on how to solve that problem. So I'm going to turn it over to Justin, who's going to do kind of like that part of it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we had compiled some questions, some stuff that had come in, some people, and so I'm going to direct them over to Eugene. The first one that I kind of consolidated a bunch of them is, what's the biggest difference that you see between like home Wi-Fi and office Wi-Fi? Why is it that the office Wi-Fi is set up in a particular way, or like public Wi-Fi is set up in a particular way, and how's that different than how it's set up in homes usually?
I mean, a lot of that is just the sense of scale. If you have a home Wi-Fi, you might have one or two access points. You think about the square footage of a house, even a large house, then compare to an office or then to a public space, and then the number of users. The home user, you'll have 5 people, maybe 6, something like that, and 3 times that many devices, maybe, because people have a computer, a phone, smart TV, toaster, etc. Like I'm working on some blog post articles, and I was surveying my own home and found that I have a neighbor who has like a Samsung dryer is the strongest Wi-Fi radio in the neighborhood. It's like the tallest peak on that survey chart for a dryer. The traffic is probably low, but the signal is super strong. So in an office environment, one of the things you have is people with laptops roaming around the office, going to meetings. So in that corporate environment, you have a management system that kind of lives on top of the access points that manages that transition. So when you move your laptop from place to place, it joins the closest access point, or not necessarily the closest, but the one that's the least congested. That never quite works, though. It's pretty good, but that is probably one of the biggest challenges in Wi-Fi, is tuning that to let that seamless handoff happen. And that's one of the things we end up spending a lot of time on.
So one of the things something like you were mentioning is that there's a couple of things to take into consideration with that. One was the just coverage for that area, and the other you said was number of users and devices.
Right.
Between those two, is there like a one that's more I don't say important, but one that you kind of factor in more than the other, or is it kind of mix and match of both?
Most home gear is designed for the amount of stuff they kind of expect you to have, if that makes sense. What you'll see on the corporate devices, though, is the radio sets are higher end radio sets, and they can carry more simultaneous conversations, so to speak, with the end users. So the one thing you think about is something called airtime, which is how much time is being spent actually sending and receiving a signal. And some radios are able to do multiple streams to multiple places at the same time. Some are not. The cheaper ones you'll have in your house, they might cost a tenth of what the thing you'll have in your office costs. and then in the office you'll have 5 or 10 of them versus 1 or 2 in your house. So yeah,
Right.
corporate network costs a lot more,
Mhm.
but it's designed to have people all day, every day working professionally on it. So now we have this case where everybody's at home trying to
Yeah.
do
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much where we're at now, is that
Nail on the head.
everybody at home is
Yeah.
trying to work on it. So then I'll go on to the next group of questions we got in. A lot of this is about stuff that we've heard people talk about in their home Wi-Fi, how to problems that they've come in. And I think the biggest one that comes up is, like George mentioned, is where there's just that spot in your house or your
Yeah.
apartment where there's no coverage, or where you walk through and it just drops out. What are
Right.
some ways that we can help, or how would you kind of get around that, or identify where that is in your house, or what can you do to help prevent that?
Yeah. So, I mean, what we would do in a corporate office is we would get a floor plan and load it into a piece of software we use that lets you model the thing, but it's very
Mhm.
expensive. It's outside the scope of what you would do for your house.
Mhm.
But what you can do for your house is kind of wander around room to room and sample the signal strength. In one of the upcoming articles, I have like some tools. I have a Mac tool and a PC tool you can use for measuring signal strength, measuring your neighbors. And you can try to figure out, maybe I should move my access point, or depending on the layout of the house, maybe I need more than one, but now how do I rig up the other one? Because you've
Mhm.
got people buy these things they call like a booster. It's like a little box. It joins your Wi-Fi and then rebroadcasts it. Some of those work pretty well, or they're part of an integrated system where they sell you several of them, and it's designed out of the gate to do this.
Mhm.
Or you buy the little cheapo booster thing, and then you call me and you're like, "Hey, this booster I bought doesn't work." A lot of those cheap ones don't work. Or what people do is they put it too far away. They put it in the room where the Wi-Fi isn't working, and that doesn't work because it can't pick up the Wi-Fi. It needs to be between you and the room where it doesn't work.
Right.
And one thing you have to think about is signal strength and frequency, and how that penetrates objects and how that moves through free space. The 2.4 gig wireless network can go a lot further and can punch through a lot more walls than the
Mhm.
5 can. The trade-off is it's slower. The other trade-off is in an urban environment like where I live, all your neighbors have it and it punches through your walls too. So the 2.4 gig band may not be usable sometimes because there's just so much neighbor interference. It doesn't
Right.
work.
Okay,
That's
so
the case in my house. That's the case in a lot of our customers' offices. I'll do a survey, a professional survey in an office, and pick up 800 other access points.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do? Like, let's say I'm my house and I find that that's what's going on in an apartment building, and I'm just picking up a lot of interference. Is there really anything that you can do about that, or
Kind of. I
Mhm.
mean, you can cover everything with tinfoil. That does. If you tinfoil all your walls, that probably will work. As long
Might
as
be
it's grounded.
expensive.
Yeah.
It needs to be grounded. You can also buy like iron ball paint that's a groundable metal paint. Like
Yeah.
used to paint the SR-71 with. You can get a paint like that. But realistically, probably avoid the 2.4 band. Because, like I said, it's too much noise from the neighbors on that band. There's also fewer channels to choose from, so the chances of conflict is a lot higher. On the 5 gig band, check your radio signal strength. That may be on auto mode, and you could turn it up a little. And if you're doing the survey like I described, or like I will describe in the article, you can see what frequencies your neighbors are using and try to avoid those frequencies. At least see which ones are the strongest. Manually set yours to something that doesn't conflict. The auto modes usually work fairly well, but they don't, like, you take a new Wi-Fi device out of the box, it'll be on auto channel, auto power, and that usually works okay. But in a congested environment, it may not.
Right.
That makes
And
sense.
if you do manually assign a frequency channel, what'll happen is your neighbors who are on auto channel may move away from it because
Right.
they're detecting you with a strong signal, and their auto stuff might go, "Oh, okay, I'll move away,"
That makes
and
sense.
that may help you.
Mhm.
Or the neighbor will read the same article and then go, "Oh, well, let me see the settings." So, I mean, in theory, if you cooperated with your neighbors, you could develop a channel plan for your immediate space around you, and you could all not conflict with each other.
Yes. Most people don't close the hatch on the garbage, and they
Yeah.
can't move down that part. So,
Yeah.
So the next group of questions we got in were not so much the dead spot, but where your internet or your connection is just slow all the time. Like when you're on
Right.
wireless in your house or apartment, it's just not a good connection. What would you recommend for people who are running into that, or what they can do
Well,
to help through that?
well, the first thing you need to do is establish a baseline without the wireless,
Hmm.
because the wireless just rides on top of your wired connection. So if your wired connection's no
Mhm.
good, your wireless will be no good. So you might have fast local access to some server you have, but that doesn't help you if you're trying to get your work done. So the first step always is take your laptop or whatever good computer you have, plug it directly into your router, make sure Wi-Fi is off, so you're guaranteed that traffic's going through the wire, and do speed tests and
Right.
see. Because if the speed test result there is bad,
Hmm.
then it's not your Wi-Fi, it's your provider. One of the things we're seeing, if you have a cable modem connection, a lot of people over the years said, oh, at night my cable doesn't work well. And what's happening is all your neighbors are home, and on a cable modem, everybody in your building, if it's a building, or everybody in your neighborhood, if it's houses, are on the same segment together. And
Right.
that segment can easily get overloaded. It's not designed for everybody to be on it streaming Netflix 4K all at the same time. So
What
it
could
was just
possibly go
never
wrong?
it was never designed for that.
Right.
So then everybody's clobbering it, and performance degrades. So now what are we happening during the day? It's the same problem. It's the same problem at night, but worse, because now everybody's at home working and watching
All the time.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Right.
They have
Right.
Netflix on their one monitor, and then they're working over here. And one thing Netflix has actually been doing, I know they're going to do this in Europe, and they might be doing it here now, is when you just start something, and YouTube's I think doing this. When you start up a video, it's going to display it in a low res off the bat. You have to push a button, go to high res. So that way, if you just have music videos on in the background, so you can have music while you're working, it's not downloading 4K video.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
kind of connecting two things that you had mentioned before. You had said that the Wi-Fi performance is kind of based both on how many devices you have and how space and how strong the radio is. And then you're saying for part of the troubleshooting is to plug in. And tying that back to that dryer that's on Wi-Fi, is there like what should people do if they're finding that they have a lot of devices that are on Wi-Fi? Is it I mean, I always like to plug everything in. Is that the right way to go about it, to
If you
plug stuff
can,
in?
yeah. If you can, yeah. And everything you plug in, there's two benefits. One, the plugged in thing isn't on Wi-Fi anymore, so it will work better. The other thing is you've taken it off the Wi-Fi, so there's more bandwidth available on the Wi-Fi for everything
Mhm.
else. Like, because you'll have a lot of devices that you can't really plug in. A lot of IoT stuff doesn't have an Ethernet port. Your iPads don't. I mean, you can buy an Ethernet port for your iPad, but then you're like,
Carrying
with
that
a
around.
wire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Defeats the purpose.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything you can take off is better.
Right.
The other questions that we got in about home support stuff, one that was common was people saying that they, even if they're just in one spot, that their connection will just drop out seemingly randomly, that they'll be connected, things will work, and then they'll have no Wi-Fi, and then it'll reconnect.
Right.
Is that something that you've seen? And
Yes.
what can we do to help with that?
That is often that your equipment, your actual broadcasting point, your Wi-Fi access point, or your Wi-Fi router, if it's a combined box,
Mhm.
often that is that it's on auto channel and it's decided it's time to change channels.
Ah,
And when
okay.
it does the channel change, it drops everything for a few seconds.
Right.
That's a common one. The other thing is it just could be your ISP is having trouble, because everybody's ISPs are all banged up right now.
I have a random question. Just a little on is would you recommend people to use the built-in Wi-Fi on a home router or a different piece of equipment?
It depends. I mean, some
Right.
of the ones that the ISP gives you are fairly nice, and some of them aren't.
Right.
One thing I forgot to mention about speeds is there's several different generations of Wi-Fi equipment. There's the newest one, Wi-Fi 6 it's called, which they started putting numbers on them because everybody was getting confused. Because there's A, B, G, N, AC, AC Wave 2, AX. Like, what are those?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You wrap your head around it. 6 is newer than 5 is newer than 4.
Right. Right.
And
Makes
as they
sense.
get newer, they get faster. The original 802.11b was 11 megabits. AX in theory can do multiple gigabit, but good luck ever seeing that for real. But
Right.
in a lab, in theory, in an absolute perfect world, use case, it could do it.
Maybe if you use that black paint on your walls, you get that speed.
Yeah.
So but remember, your Wi-Fi, if you go and you do a speed test, you go, oh, my Wi-Fi is slow. It's only ever going to be as fast as that internet connection. So if you have a 100 meg internet connection, you're going to see 100 even if your device is rated for 500.
Right.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
Remember, that number is also the aggregate up and down of everyone on it at the same time. It's not like per person max download.
That makes sense.
So it's the total that the radio can do. If I've got 5 machines doing it at once, it's going to hit that, not each one. Okay, that makes sense.
That's good.
And 500 is really 250 because that number is the up and down at the same time. But nobody is full up and down at the same time when they're at home.
Send and receive, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Like even in a professional setting, we open big Photoshop files or whatever. You're not going to see that. But don't open your big Photoshop files on Wi-Fi.
Wire up. Get connected.
So if the auto channel, if someone is having that situation where they're dropping out of like it's dropping their connection, and it is the auto channel that's looking for another channel, is it better for them to leave auto channel on to while it's dropping them but shifting it around, or better for them to try and find a channel to set manually?
That's kind of a experimental situation. You really have to decide. You have to try and decide based on your experimental results.
Okay. So pretty much just test both and see what works better.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to point out is if you're getting the auto channel drop, you'll actually usually see on your computer that it's the little Wi-Fi thing has disconnected. Like you don't have it, and then it comes back. If it's a problem with your ISP, that Wi-Fi radio symbol will kind of stay, but you're still having trouble because the ISP is having trouble. Or you could just have interference. It's just too much neighbor noise. It's trying to pick a whisper out of a hurricane. And it just can't do it.
Right.
Makes sense.
Especially, sorry, one more thing. How old is that ISP? You might have that router from the ISP that has Wi-Fi built in that you got 10 years ago when you signed up, and it's old, and it's not the current Wi-Fi spec, or even the last spec.
Yeah, usually you can refresh your equipment from the cable or ISP provider, but once again, sometimes buying a piece of equipment,
just buy something.
Buy some great ones out there for the money. Not that we're giving references to any piece of equipment, specifically piece of equipment, but there's some really good pieces of equipment out there that you can buy for home that you can mesh this and that thing. So. With that, actually, I think this is kind of our next piece that we want to talk about, and this is like probably the most important, I think, in all of this is Wi-Fi security. It's a topic near and dear to my heart because I think that it's like the thing that is the most difficult for people to wrap their heads around. So with that, I'm going to let Justin kind of do his part, and then you guys are going to go through it.
Yeah. So I think the biggest part, at least, of Wi-Fi security that comes up is the simplest one, is about setting passwords on Wi-Fi, and a bunch of questions came in were about that. What you can do, what are some good ways to set your password, and what do you do if you've forgotten what your password was to connect new devices? What are your thoughts on like good Wi-Fi passwords?
That one's a tough case because you want them to be kind of long and complicated, but you don't want them to be impossible to type when you've got the stupid little remote for your Roku and you're like up, down. So it's a tough compromise. Like I said, a longer but simpler password is probably better than crazy up and down caps and characters and numbers because of the ease of typing it into gear. On the other hand, you really only have to do that once per device. Right. So it's kind of up to you as a trade-off, but keep the password decently complicated.
What standard should you use?
It's kind of up to you. The bunch of words run together that can be generated randomly. There's some websites that'll give you those. Those work fairly well.
Okay. What encryption standard should you use?
It's WPA2 is the current standard. If you go into your device, WPA and WPA2 will probably be your only choices, and you should just do 2 only, because WPA1 is kind of deprecated at this point. And everything that you're going to buy supports 2. Like there's no anything made in the last 10 years supports 2.
Okay, cool. It's really important that it's 2 and not WPA. And if you see something that's called WEP,
run
away.
Don't do that.
Need a device. No WEP.
Yeah.
WEP is completely deprecated and been compromised for many, many years. So do not use WEP.
Yeah.
So
one of the things you mentioned earlier was IoT devices, and I know you're seeing a lot of that kind of stuff showing up in people's homes and on their networks, where like smart light bulbs and dryers and stuff like that. What do you recommend from a security standpoint to do to help secure those devices, or help keep your network secure with those devices on it?
That's a tough one. There's a saying that the S in IoT stands for security. So the problem is a lot of these devices are not really well supported by their manufacturers. They're good targets for people to try to compromise. Often when a new device comes out, the old one's abandoned. There's no more firmware updates for it. But even if it is under support, people don't think about them. They're just kind of there in the background. So they don't get their updates applied. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of them, but a lot of people are. Depending on how your network equipment is set up, you can try to isolate them. A lot of them don't need to talk directly to your device once they've been configured. They just talk to the cloud. So they could be in a separate subnet of your network. But that's probably a little too advanced for the conversation today, but it's something to think about. If your device has a guest mode, but the guest mode uses the password, if you put them in that guest mode, they can get to the internet, but they can't get to anything else, and they probably can't even get to each other, depending on your Wi-Fi device. A lot of Wi-Fi routers have an option of guest mode where the guests can't even see each other. So that prevents what we call a lateral movement, where one thing gets hacked and then tries to get the thing next to it.
Right.
But they can still have their internet access to do their function. But not every IoT device can work that way. Some of them have to talk to your device. Like if you're controlling your Sonos, you have to be on the same subnet as your Sonos.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. The Sonos is a complicated device.
Yeah.
In its own way.
Yeah.
That's for another day.
That's a topic.
That's a whole separate thing.
Would you recommend that people buy a separate access point or a separate router for the IoT if they can't do guest?
If you don't have a guest mode where you can do it, it's not necessarily overkill. But if you plug that new access point into your existing network and it's just it's broadcasting that same network, it's not really accomplishing anything. So if you really want to secure a home environment, you should probably give us a call. Because just trying to I can't really just tell you in a quick call like this, like how to do it. I need to know more about your network.
Yeah, and the devices as well, how they talk, what they do, that sort of thing. So it's great. So I think Justin, any more questions on your side?
Yeah, there was. One other one about.
It's a good one. That's a really important one.
Yeah, what you can do if you think that there's someone connected to your network, or if you see something like a device you don't recognize when you're looking at your Wi-Fi that's connected to your network. What kind of things can you do about that?
Well, you can try to figure out what it is. Sometimes there are some clues, like if you're in your router and the router gives you a digest of the clients that can see it, or they can see rather, so it's people joined to your network, or even just if it's DHCP pool lets you see the addresses of those computers or devices. You can every device will be listed usually in your router's listing with what's called a MAC address, which is a 12-digit code with a bunch of colons in it. You can take that and then go on Google and look up MAC address prefix lookup, paste that in, and it'll tell you what brand that device is. The first 6 characters tell you the vendor. So you can figure out the brand of the thing, and then you might be like, oh, okay, that's my Philips light bulb. I just forgot I had that. Or, you should really, if you're really trying to get a handle on your home network, is catalog all your own stuff, so you know what your stuff is. And then if you're seeing something you don't recognize, maybe, it's possible someone guessed your password. Or maybe you don't have guest mode turned on, or sorry, not guest mode. Maybe you don't have security turned on. Maybe you have it open, and people could just join it. A lot of networks are that way. Most aren't anymore. Most of the time when I do a survey, there's very few open networks.
Yeah.
And a lot of those open networks are ones that are kind of quasi-secured, like a hotel where it's open, but you still have to put a password in on a web page.
Yeah. Captive portal sort of thing.
Yeah. Be advised though, those are not encrypted when you join them that way.
Yeah, I was going to ask. That was another question that came up. Was I know for I've was it Altice was optimum, and they give me the optimum Wi-Fi hotspots that you can connect to, and there's
Oh
no
yeah,
password on them. It just you connect and you log in on the web page. Are those
that's because it knows
is
your
it
MAC address actually. Once
so
you've
those
done that
are
the first
safe
time,
to they're not encrypted? That's not safe to use.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't recommend it.
Um,
When I'm setting up a new environment and the ISP is so helpfully installed that extra access point, I unplug it and chuck it in a drawer. 'Cause it's just more noise in the customer environment. When I do a survey, 30 to 50% of the access points they can see are those.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's 20 different brands of them from every ISP, and there's the City Link and the hotels that are around you. There's tons and tons of networks just everywhere.
Going back to the other question, if you do notice that there's something on your network, is changing your password enough to like stop that, or is there anything else that you should do? Like if you find something that you don't recognize that's been connected to your Wi-Fi.
That should be enough. It'll
Mhm.
keep them from joining it again. I mean, don't change it to the same password +1, but uh, try to make it reasonably complicated and different. But yes, if it's just somebody who's joined your Wi-Fi, it's probably that they got your password. It might be your neighbor that came over and you let them join. It could be something as simple as
That's a good
that.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in a neighborhood, the chance of getting cracked is fairly low.
Mhm.
Right.
But
Exactly. Unless if someone's really kind of targeting you. Well, with
Yeah.
that, I'm going to wrap it up for today.
Mhm.
Gene, this was super useful. I think we're going to do
Yeah,
another
me too.
session around Wi-Fi and security, some best practices. I think actually go on our docket of things that we're trying to put together a list of things that we want to do these Q&As for. A lot of that, it's been great, and it's interesting seeing how everyone's been working from home and learning. I know the kids, we're doing some sessions around educational resources. We might do that again. There's a bunch of stuff going on here in terms of like this a big shift in just how we're working, and it's kind of exciting to do it. And once again, if there's anyone that has any questions or needs, please submit them to our website, come to our LinkedIn, come to our YouTube page. We're checking everything like that. And please like and share and subscribe. We want it out there. And actually, our next session is going to be super exciting, actually, because this is a common source of frustration for both us and for our end users and for everyone in the universe, which is connecting peripherals, the different kind of ports on things, and so like, do I need this one or do I need this one? I don't know, which one is it? And so we're gonna have a great session. We'll put together some great content around that, and peripherals are also I just got a flash notice. Peripherals are cables and connectors and adapters and accessories that you can connect to your computer or to your devices. So because I say an RJ45 and most people have no idea what I'm talking about, and we're going to try to dispel all that unknowns about what the heck this stuff is. Even ourselves talking about wired connections today. Most people don't necessarily know what Ethernet cable looks like, how it connected to your laptop. I don't have a port. What are the things we need? So we're going to go through that. We'll have a great session, I think, around this. And please tune in on Wednesday at 10:30. We're going to be here, and hope to see you then. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks, Gene. Really appreciate it. Awesome.
All right. Bye, everybody.